evening, and welcome to another edition of the newly named The Murphy Show. We asked last edition for suggestions on a name, and a lot of people liked the logo. So to keep the logo and not change the logo, instead of it being called The Tom Murphy Show, it's just The Murphy Show. There you have it. Tonight, and at the end of the last show, we talked a little bit about a pet peeve of mine, which was the Board of Elections, which I didn't think was being run as efficiently as it could be. But tonight we're going to do the other side of the coin and talk about an aspect of Westchester County government that's being run much more efficiently than it ever was, the County Clerk's office. And tonight, we're very privileged to have here with us tonight the County Clerk of Westchester County, Tim Idoni. Tim, thanks for showing up.
Great to be here, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, can you tell me, I know there's been a lot of innovation and change in the County Clerk's office over the past 5-6 years. Could you tell me about some of that?
Sure. We've been there. We just finished our 7th year up there, and the office when I first walked in 2006 was basically could be described as a mass of paper, cardboard boxes, literally hundreds and hundreds of boxes of paper. Some of it which included deeds and mortgages with checks attached to them, because the office was somewhere between 4 and 6 months behind, depending on who you talk to, in processing real estate transactions. The real estate boom was going on, not to degrade my predecessor, but there were better ways of doing stuff, to put it mildly. And the first thing we started to do was to find innovative ways using electronic submissions, using computer systems, digitizing paper, to cut back on the amount of paper that came into the office, to cut back on the amount of paper that needed to be transmitted, and cut back the amount of paper that needed to be stored, because there is a cost to storing things in any business, especially government. So we went to work on that, and then what we did was we then came up with, the first thing to do was we actually put our legal division into an e-filing system with the help of the Office of Court Administration, which now, to give you an example, we would do close to 30,000 files a year, court cases a year. Mm-hmm. Of that, they were all paper. Now in 2013, only about 3,000, 4,000 of them are paper, cutting way back on that type of work.
Just to kind of educate the public a little bit, when you said court cases, every court decision in Westchester County has to be filed with the County Clerk's office.
Well, every court case in the Supreme Court and the county courts, which is the predominant areas of the court system in Westchester County. We don't do the family courts. We don't do circuit courts. We do everything else, which is substantial. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I am the clerk of the courts for those two courts, and it's my job to make sure that the paper runs, and now the electronic filings run smoothly into the court system and then back out when they come back, when the cases are done. We handle civil cases. We handle some criminal cases. We handle foreclosures, tax certioraries, matrimonials. 15% of our work is our matrimonials or divorce cases. Okay. And so a lot of the most sensitive things in the people's lives wind up in my office, whether it be that or, as I said, on the land record side, those are real estate, deeds, mortgages, anything connected with the closing of a home. We then went into the e-recording this year of deeds and mortgages, and pretty soon, I would say within the next 3 years, 4 years or so, when you go to a house closing, you may not ever see any paper there. Everything will be done on a computer.
That would be...
I spent 2 years in Albany lobbying to allow for electronic recordings of documents such as this. Came through in flying colors. We started September 24th this year. And all those boxes of paper are now disappearing. We still get a lot of paper, but we've cut way back. And what's the result? Well, obviously we don't have to move the paper, but we also save a ridiculous amount of money. We're actually spending less money now than we were in 2006, despite union raises and everything else. We've been able to cut 35 full-time positions out of the budget without laying anybody off.
Through attrition?
Yeah, through attrition. People leave, we reorganize the department, then reorganized again. We've been able to cut back, as I said, on storage costs, cut back on postage. An electronic document doesn't have to be mailed back to the attorney. Right. So you start fitting all these things together, and it's a good model for all government to think about.
Certainly is. It must, the attorneys who are working on cases must appreciate it, because the access to information is their stock and trade.
Well, you're absolutely right. Change is hard, though. I mean, they were a little scared of this stuff when I first started out. But what we did was we went out and we partnered.
It might lead to less billable hours.
Well, yeah, I doubt it.
That's right. Yeah.
But sorry to those attorneys that are watching the show. But what we did, we went out, we partnered with the Westchester Bar Association. We went out with the Land Title Association, all these groups that are affiliated with the work that we do, and we explained things to them. They worked with us to make sure the process was done properly. We went up to the state and did the same thing at the state level. And then when we finished it, we brought them in and we did training sessions. We've trained over 1,000 attorneys in Westchester County to the methods that we're now using, and they love it.
I'm
They
sure.
really do.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and now we're working on the national banks on things like mortgage satisfactions. When somebody closes, they have to satisfy the mortgage. The big banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, we're trying to bring them in on the electronic recording. They want to do it. They're anxious to do it. They got to learn it, and it'll work. Yeah.
Let me just touch on another area that your office handles, and that is the administration of gun permits.
Oh yeah.
And there's been a big strum and drang over the Journal News printing, I think it was Rockland and Westchester County gun permit owners.
Right.
And I just want to express from my point of view, you know, the people whose names appeared had gone through a legal process and were legal gun owners. And I understand that the information should be public because it's public information. But for the Journal News, I mean, it can't. What it seemed to me journalistically was the Journal News just threw this in the paper without any understanding or any sifting through the information.
Well,
And what always interests me is, you know, who gets permits and why do they get permits and how do permits come about?
Right.
I mean, you don't want to criminalize your you know, in any way, you know, cast aspersions on the people who have permits. They did it lawfully.
Right.
It's fine to have a gun permit. You know, you want people to get permits. You don't want people to have illegal guns.
Right.
So could you just explain the process and what was the process like when you took office and how's the process different now?
It's one of the few things in New York State, not just in Westchester in my office, that hasn't changed a bit in 30 years. Even the fees are, if you file for an index number or file a law case in our legal division, it's gone from $35 to $210 over the last 20 years or so. Pistol permits are still $10. And the amendment to a pistol permit, when you add a gun or subtract a gun, you have to pay us $3. It is dirt cheap to get a pistol permit in Westchester, and it's the whole state of New York. Those fees are set throughout the state of New York. So it's almost still an archaic system. However, what's gotten more sophisticated and good for us is that the reviews by the Public Safety Department, when somebody files an application, you have to have the whole thing vetted. They do background checks, they do fingerprinting, they do a lot of stuff. All that kind of work is now really 21st century. And the Public Safety Department in Westchester County does a great job. My job is basically to take the applications, make sure it's filled out, give it to Public Safety. They review everything. We get it back and we send it up to the courts because the licensing officers in Westchester County are the county court judges.
So they actually issue the license?
They sign off on a license, and then it comes back down to me, and we do the administrative work. We actually print out the pistol permits. We put the guns on the back of the permit so that if a police officer pulls somebody over and says, you got 4 guns in the back of your car, and there's only 2 on the license, they get pulled in because they are now carrying 2 guns they're not supposed to carry.
Right, so the serial number of the gun has to be on the license too.
Well, no, not the serial, just the kind of gun it is. They match it up that way. Of course, it's a criminal situation, then they start getting into serial numbers and all that. We don't worry about that from our end. However, it gets a little sticky sometimes. People sometimes get complain that they shouldn't have been turned down. They were turned down. Mr. Idoni, why aren't you giving me some help in getting this taken care of? Doesn't work that way. It's a very clean system.
Right, and
the judges are the only people that have the right to decide these decisions, make these decisions.
Right, and that's the way you want it. You don't want people using political influence to get a pistol permit. Because the whole thing about government is that if people believe that the table's not tilted, they'll buy in.
Absolutely.
But once they think the table's tilted one way or the other, they're going to say, well, why should I follow rules?
That's absolutely correct. And truthfully, at one time that was tilted. One of the things that I promised to do when I ran in 2005 for the first time was that I was going to level the table and make sure things were done on an equitable basis. You know, pistol permits would be steered to a particular judge who may be more apt to give an approval than another judge. That stuff has ended. It goes through the court system now nice and cleanly. So
that's what I thought the Journal News story should be about. Who gets pistol permits and how they get them.
Yeah.
Not that people have them.
Yeah.
Because it's like anything else.
That's not going to change. People are going to have pistols. The fact that it's a concealed weapon is why a pistol is different than a rifle. There are no permits for rifles in New York State.
Right.
You know, some of these issues that have happened, unfortunately, over the last few months, especially in Newtown, Connecticut, were rifles that wouldn't even be permitted in New York State and weren't permitted in Connecticut either.
Right.
That's up to people smarter than me to figure out. But there's going to be some strong things happening in Albany. In terms of
assault weapons?
In terms of assault weapons for sure, and in terms of this issue that's going around now, which is that their names and addresses go public, and they have been public for a long, long time, well over 30 years. And as a matter of fact, the
And
law
that's
was
by New York state law.
That's New York state law. It says the penal law, section 400, I've got it memorized now,
I
says
bet
that,
you
all, that all names and addresses shall be a public record, which means if somebody asks me for it, I got to give it up.
Exactly.
The Putnam County Clerk and the county executive up there made a conscientious decision to say no. They're going to test this in court. They're going to lose. They're grandstanding. There's been numerous court cases on this. As you know, case law determines all this. And every case that's been adjudicated under this section of the law has gone in favor of the public record.
Well, you've done your job. You've upheld your oath of office to follow the laws in New York State.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
you know, you're to be commended for that. You don't make that law, you just enforce that law.
Yeah, and as you know, you've known me for a long time, Tom. I'm not a grandstander. It
No,
was
you're
very easy to go out there and grandstand. Say, oh, I'm not going to do this, and then a week later, the judge orders you to do it anyway.
And you know, and they have the king grandstander up there, Greg Ball. But that's just my opinion.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. when the grandstanders get together, they named him king.
That's great.
You know, let's talk a little bit about other things that are going on in the county.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of controversy over the years, and this is an ongoing situation, about the housing settlement. And you know, I grew up in affordable housing and subsidized housing in New York City, and that benefited my life a lot, and my parents' life, and my brother's. And I know you've always been a supporter of affordable housing, I just want to clarify this, because affordable housing does not necessarily mean public housing and projects.
As a matter of fact, it doesn't at all.
It doesn't mean that at all.
Doesn't at all.
Exactly.
As you probably remember, before I was mayor of New Rochelle back in 1991, I built affordable housing for the New Rochelle Neighborhood Revitalization Corporation. We maintained a public housing project not far from the Mamaroneck line, as a matter of fact, on Fifth Avenue. That was a low-income housing project, which we tried to turn into a more of affordable, you know, to have less of the mystique, so we say, of a low-income housing project. But affordable housing is absolutely necessary in this county. Every economist that I've ever talked to has said that one of the biggest issues in Westchester is having working class people making $35,000, $45,000, $55,000, $75,000, be able to afford to live here. And it's a driving force, no matter what the courts may say or the federal government may say about one community has not done the right thing from an ethnic, racial, income level type of situation. We need affordable housing built in this county to keep the local economy going. People have to be able to live here. And there's plenty of room for it in most communities. It shouldn't have a mystique of, you know, I've heard this quote too many times, those people are moving in. I don't want to ask who those people are. I can imagine who they're talking about.
Well, I used to be one of those people. Yeah.
Well, you know, and it's...
Some people might feel that way about my moving here, but the heck with them.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. You've been a great public servant for a long time too, you know. But yeah, so I've studied the issue, I've worked the issue, and the resistance to this is basically a political resistance, as far as I'm concerned. I have a strong disagreement with the county executive on this particular issue. I think he tried to delay the process in the hopes that perhaps his guy would have won the presidency, and maybe the Housing and Urban Development Department at the federal level would change their attitude toward Washington. Well, they lost. The same people are here, and it's going to be another hot button issue probably by springtime here. And there are a number of communities, by the way, that are participating in the program.
Just so to kind of give a little background, there was a county entered into a settlement agreement with the federal government, and there were certain stipulations. And if correct me if I'm wrong, but the person who was hired to oversee that has now stated that the county is in violation of that.
Correct.
And blatant violation in some sense, especially with the Section 8 housing law, where they were told they had, you know, they're playing a semantic game that, oh, you know, we proposed it, but we don't have to support it, and he vetoes it. So it's almost like throwing it in their face.
Yeah, that particular law was, very simply put, a law that would promote the ability for people to get housing. And in a sense, maybe force a landlord to take Section 8, but Section 8 people are working families.
Exactly.
There's no disgrace in taking a Section 8 certificate. I used to work Section 8 administration for a number of years. There's nothing wrong with that. He vetoed the bill, which put us right into a violation of the federal mandates. And it's time for them to wake up and get the thing done. It's not that many units.
You had to know that vetoing the bill was going to open up a hornet's nest. So when you do something like that and you're a public official, you're opening up a hornet's nest for what? For a political reason.
Playing your base.
Yeah, you're playing your base. Right. You know, you're trying to divide us, and you're not trying to unite us.
Absolutely.
And that, to me, is the worst kind of way to govern. You know, you could sit there and say, I didn't negotiate this, I don't agree with it, but it's something the county agreed to, and I have a duty as an elected official to, it's a contract.
Absolutely.
That I have to follow.
No doubt about it. I've been an elected official for 21 years, 14 years as mayor, as you know, in New Rochelle, 7 years in this job. And before that, for 11 years, I was a village manager and a city manager. So I know I'm not naive enough to think that politics isn't going to rear its ugly head on these kind of things. But when you have a mandate that's going to cost millions of dollars to come out of if you don't get it done right, it's time to stop playing politics and just get it done.
Yeah.
Just get it done.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do things that you might not agree with.
That little agency in New Rochelle built, just in my short time, oh gosh, probably a couple hundred units. You're talking 750 units for the whole county.
Exactly. Yeah, and we were filming now right across the street from the Washingtonville housing lines, which has done an amazing job of turning around Washingtonville and the village of Mamaroneck.
Has. Yeah.
And it's a little bit of seed money goes a long way.
Yeah.
And it's vital. You hit the nail on the head. We need people who are going to be secretaries and firemen and probationary police officers and school custodians who don't make a lot of money, and you want them to live in the community.
No doubt about it.
You don't want to have a snowstorm and have everybody have to come from Rockland County and your streets don't get plowed because they can't get here either.
I get a fair percentage of my staff that comes from, I have two people come from Dutchess, one comes from Orange County, and a number of people from Putnam. And it's a long way to come, and that's people that are taking money out of the county with their paycheck.
Yep,
It's like it's like stay here and spend it here.
I mean, I work, I'm an elevator mechanic in the city, and I work with a lot of guys who, when the housing boom was going on, couldn't get the kind of house they wanted, and they moved out to Pennsylvania. Yeah. And they have to come from Pennsylvania. I mean, and, they always tell you, it's just an hour and a half. That's, if there's nobody on the road and it doesn't rain and, there's...
Right.
Well,
one of the things I'd like to point out to people on this particular issue is that in New Rochelle I used to get beat up because we were building housing downtown. Yeah. And I said, the schools are going to be inundated, they're going to spend too much money on educating these children. And I said, do you realize that one of the criteria for judging whether a community is doing well is that their population is growing, that people are moving in? And what happens is banks fall into the city or into your town. The restaurants start opening up. Retailers start following those people into the community. And the chief indicator of a bad community is a drop in population. And we've seen that all over New York State.
Yes, we have.
The fact if you can provide decent housing, and even if people have to commute to the city or commute to another county in order to get the work done, that money comes back home here to Westchester County.
That's correct. Yes. And it provides, we all give lip service to diversity, but this is real diversity that we're providing.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And our children and ourselves, we benefit from that.
Yeah.
In a million different ways that you can't really quantify.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit more about Westchester County. There's your second term is ending.
Right.
And from everyone I've talked to on both sides of the aisle, the county clerk's office is, because I've dealt with a lot of real estate people and lawyers in Mamaroneck, and the county clerk office is really efficient and working well.
We try to, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm glad you tried.
It's working well.
It's working well.
Thanks.
And are you planning on running for a third term?
I am going to run. Maybe I'm making my announcement here tonight.
You heard it here first.
I am indeed going to run. I did fiddle around, as you know, for close to a year with running for county executive. I decided not to for a number of reasons. The first one and most important one being my family. I did give up a lot of time to my family. It's 14 years as mayor, and my daughters sat around and said, one's getting married, one's already married, the other two will probably get married in the next couple of years, grandchildren coming through. Give us Dad back for another 4 years, and maybe in 4 years we'll take a look at it. But I studied a lot of the issues in the county and went around to a lot of elected officials from Peekskill and Corton right down here into Mamaroneck. And I learned a lot. I learned that the county still has tremendous possibilities. It's got tremendous challenges, and if we can get out of, as you mentioned before, you hit it right on the head, if we can get out of this morass of the political infighting that goes on all the time, we can get an awful lot of stuff done here because you got great people working here and you got great resources to deal with. White Plains in many ways is emulating Washington. And that's not so good.
No, it's not good. It's not
I heard the other night that only the 29% approval rating for the Congress en masse, and that's terrible. I think we got great Congress people coming out of Westchester, but what's going on? That they can't get anything to get their acts together.
And I think things have just, I have my own opinion, and my opinion is that, that one side has gotten so polarized, and they've, to call the right wing of the Republican Party conservative is a misnomer, because a conservative wants to keep the status quo, I mean, but they want to totally, remake the system, the social compact that we've all been living with since the 30s and 40s. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance. They don't believe in that. And okay, that's your opinion, and you might be able, it doesn't wash with me, but okay, you have a right to believe it, but don't call yourself a conservative, because that's trying to blow up government. The strange thing is, to me, the moderate ring of the Democratic Party are really conservatives now. I'm a little bit more on the left-wing part, but there's the moderate ring, like the people like Barack Obama is you and Barack Obama are moderate people who are just saying, we just want to do good government. And there's a lot of need for that. Just good government, and how are we going to make this work?
There's a lot of places where they can input what my biggest attitude toward government right now is, if I can keep my portion of the government small, there's more money to spend on other parts of government if necessary, and if it's not necessary, it goes back into the private sector and builds the economy, more jobs in the local economy. So if we all do our jobs, it's going to pick itself up. And you're absolutely right about the analysis in terms of the different branches of the two parties. But the pure right-wing folks, the Tea Party folks, want to dismantle government.
Yes. And
that's not going to work in this country. It's not going to work in any country.
They don't understand how it works. They don't understand how government works. So if you don't understand it, it's got to be, like everything else in the old, it must be a witch. We'll burn her. You know what I mean? If you don't understand it, you're willing to blow it up because you don't know why you need it.
And you also, it makes me laugh, but it's kind of sad that you get senior citizens calling for entitlement cuts, and they're living off their Social Security check.
And Medicare.
And okay, so let's cut it so that your children and grandchildren don't have the same coverage when it comes through. That's crazy.
I often have the feeling, I look at my kids and I think, geez, we're leaving you a world that's getting hotter and wetter, and we're leaving you all this debt, and it's just, and they didn't do anything. They just, they're just trying to live their lives, and they don't see the bomb coming. But guys like us who have been around and understand a little bit of what's going on, it's scary. And you got, like you said, you having grandchildren now, and you wonder what kind of world we're living in.
And at one time, I think a lot of these folks, because a lot of them are old-timers, think that America's just the best country in the world, and it is, and that we can take care of ourselves. But it's a global economy, as you know, too. These jobs that have been outsourced to India and in Southeast Asia, coming back. I mean, those jobs used to be done by college kids, people coming out of college who needed a job and took a less than wage than they probably were, going to get because of their talents, but they got a job. They've taken off. They're not coming back.
No, they're not. And we have to find another way to provide entry-level work at a decent salary for folks, so they can get a start. Here in Mamaroneck, in the industrial section, there used to be a lot of light manufacturing. In my neighborhood on the west side of Manhattan, in the morning you could see, getting off the subway, walking down to the west side, thousands of people who worked in these little factories. Some made clothes, some made little tool and die works. It's all gone. And it's all, art galleries, whatever it is now. That's nice to have an art gallery, but that doesn't put food on many people's table.
No doubt about it.
To have an art gallery.
And we've gotten to a service industry, of course, as well, which Westchester, I think, to his credit, the county executive has tried to do that. Hasn't been very successful, unfortunately. We're not seeing the jobs coming into Westchester. They're trying to get into some biomedical research, things of that sort. And they're all very, very sexy, but it's not really working that well right now. And jobs are it. I said that when I became mayor in New Rochelle. I'm going to produce as many jobs as I possibly can. We did produce 2,000. We produced a huge number, probably more than that in construction jobs, building those buildings downtown. Some people I know in Mamaroneck don't like them. They like looking at the skyscrapers. But it was important to try to rebuild that downtown by putting people downtown.
Yes.
I used to say to them, there were no empty storefronts on 2nd Avenue in Manhattan. Because people live there.
People live there.
They went to the stores.
They went to the stores. They went to the restaurants. And,
exactly.
Exactly. Now, just real quickly, in like a minute or two, what do you feel is the biggest issue facing Westchester right now in the next 5 years?
The biggest issue probably is the ability to be able to produce those jobs. They're going to have to put their nose to the grindstone and figure out a way to bring people in here. Set up a criteria where people can get in. I realize the county executive will say something like, well, the taxes are too high. Well, they are high, but the quality of life is very, very high here as well.
And as you know, the people expect a lot of services.
Oh, try taking their services away, right?
Try going to 1 day a week garbage pickup. You know, you'd be hung in effigy.
Yeah, I was the guy who took away, because I had to, the city was broke when I took over. I had to take away backyard garbage pickup, and people went nuts. After about 30 days, they got used to bringing it out to the curb, and everything's fine. But now we're going to 1 day. Yeah, as far as government goes, government can take care of themselves if they stop with the infighting. Private business, we're in competition with the world now, and we have to adapt to it.
Yeah, and then you're right, and it's hard to, like you were saying before, light manufacturing to be in competition with somebody across the world that's going to work for $2 an hour, or that would be a generous salary, $2 an hour. Yeah. But it's been great having you here, and I look forward to your campaigns. Your campaigns are always fun.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be in touch in the next few months. But it's hopefully. This could be a campaign, and I know you will run a campaign about issues, and it'll be about issues, but too often in Westchester County, you could see from the Latimer-Cohen race where, the Cohen campaign made it just very nasty and very personal and very, they didn't, at the end of the day, I couldn't tell what the guy would do if he was elected, because, I just kept getting, in a Democratic household, I never got so much literature from a Republican in my life.
Incredible.
He must have just had
there was over
unlimited
$5 million. I think he spent Cohen spent $4 million. I think Latimer spent $1 million and a quarter, something like that. Ridiculous amounts of money being dumped.
He's spending $4 million for a $79,000 job, and he says he's a really good businessman. I don't get it.
I don't get it. And guess what?
It
didn't work.
And it didn't work. Yeah.
Well, as you know, I run clean campaigns. I've never gone negative on my opponents. I'm 6-0 so far in elections, and I plan on running another clean win and just proving to folks that I'm the most qualified person for the job. That's running.
Yeah, and that's what gets you in.
Exactly.
That's what gets, and keeps you in.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to wrap up, but in conclusion, I just want to talk about, we are coming on the heels of a few weeks ago, the Newtown massacre, and everybody knows about the tragedy that happened in Newtown, and I think it's affected all of us. It's like one of those moments in your life where were you when you heard about it? Because it was just so horrific, and it was just so senseless and devastating. But I just want to point something out, because in the past 5-10 years, it's become kind of fashionable to kick around teachers and to kick around educators and to say, oh, they don't deserve pensions, they don't deserve a good salary, they get 3 months off, and all of this. And those women that day, some of them, actually shielded the children with their bodies. And the principal and the school psychologist ran toward the gunfire. The principal actually tried to disarm the gunman.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, I grew up around a lot of guys who thought they were tough guys, and I don't know how many of them would actually do that. And I can't say that I would have done that.
Right.
And so anybody ever says to me again that a principal or a teacher doesn't earn their money, you better be ready for an argument, because they were guardian angels, and they saved God knows how many kids' lives. And we all owe them a debt of great thanks, and especially to all of our civil servants, policemen, firemen, that always put their lives on the line. But who expects, as a kindergarten teacher, to have to put your life on the line? And they did. When push came to shove, they did their duty. And thank God for them. But we'll catch you on the next time. Tim, it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Well said. Thank you.
And we will see you probably in a month. Thanks a lot, and have a good night.